Hello, everyone. We are rolling for another episode of the JJF1 podcast, where Jonah and Jordan talk about all things related to F1. Today, we are going to rank some circuits. We'll be ranking our two worst and our three best circuits. So, Jordan, how are you feeling today? I hope that we don't have as many controversial major hot takes like we did in the previous episode about driver rankings, because that was a hectic debate.
Yeah, it was. But I really like the debates. I find them really interesting. I like hearing what the other side has to say because I know that I have some controversial opinions. I know that some of my preferences are very unconventional, and I'm excited to see what you have to say.
Well, with that being said, I think we could just go straight into it. We're going to start with the worst circuits. So for you, what is your second to worst circuit on the calendar?
Second to worst circuit, or should we start off with the worst circuit?
No, let's do second to worst and then talk about the
So,
worst.
so speaking of controversial opinions, my second to worst circuit is a circuit that is very much sought after, looked very much looking for. Every F1 fan looks forward to this race. I don't like it. It is Circuit Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. we're not holding back already.
No, we're not holding back. I am really not a fan of Spa. The only part of Spa that I'm a fan of is Sector 1.
Yeah,
I love Sector 1.
That's fair.
Sector 1 is an iconic sector. And, there could have been other circuits that I could have said just now, because there are a lot of circuits that not a lot of people like that are, unanimous. But I don't like Sector 2 and Sector 3 so much that I'm willing to put it on this list.
Look, I see where you could kind of nitpick and say that the second and the third sectors aren't great. But to be fair, I think that Sector 1 makes up for it because it's so iconic. You have Eau Rouge and Radia, and you have the Camel Straight taking up the first sector, probably the most famous sector in Formula One. I mean, if you ask a Formula One fan what to name a corner, if they know how to name any corners, they would probably tell you Eau Rouge. So I'm just curious as to why you think that the second and the third sectors don't make up for the great first sector. I'll say that the first and the second and third are mediocre, but the first one is just so great.
So just to address your point to begin with, the race is not one sector long. That sector is, I want to say 25 seconds to half a minute, or no lap in F1 is only one sector, is only 25 seconds to half a minute. So I don't think that it's fair to take that sample size and think of the entire race as only that sector, because it's not. It's one turn. It's like saying, Monza is only the Ascari chicane. It's not. It's a whole other thing. But the other two sectors to me are very complicated. And so as a fan, from a fan perspective, it's very hard to follow the race in terms of where the cars are positioned on the track.
I mean, the difficulty with that also is that the circuit is long. People don't realize how big the Spa circuit actually is because of the cameras. I think it's the biggest circuit on the calendar.
Exactly, and because it's full of so many turns, there's no room for really any high-speed overtakes. And that's what I don't really like to see that as much. I'd rather see a circuit that has a lot of high-speed overtakes, or at least some for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree. I'll agree with you on the fact that, especially if you've driven in the F1 games before, driving through sectors 2 and 3, I have a lot of difficulty getting myself through the second and third sectors, just because it's like you're so close you're on the line, especially in the second and third sectors, between doing really well and completely spinning out and ending up on the gravel. So um controversial take, but I respect it. However, I think that you are not going to like my second worst circuit, but
And
a lot
I'm
of
looking
people
forward to hearing it.
a lot of people probably will understand my choice. And my choice is the Sochi Autodrome in Russia, because what is it? Really? What is it? I think turn one is I part of the reason why I don't like this circuit so much is because it's relatively dangerous as a circuit. Um, I don't understand why F1 keeps on going there after collisions in F2 and in F1 that happen every single race at turn one, especially with the fact that if you take too much curb, you need to go through this escape route, and then which is completely screwed up Carlos Sainz's race last year
Yeah,
because it was so narrow to the point where he could barely get out. You would think that the giant turn around the Olympic Park, by the way, this track is made around an Olympic Park. You would think that just the scenery would make the track look cool, or that since they had the ability to build it around a circuit, they could make it a lot better. But they built it around the park. The giant left-hand turn, which basically spans around the entire Olympic Stadium, you would think that it would be a good circuit for overtaking and a good turn for overtaking, but it's really not the case. It's a mix of being dangerous and being boring, and that's why I think that Sochi is my second worst calendar on the circuit. Fight me.
so for those who don't know, me and Jonah have spoken, a lot in private, and I have told Jonah that I actually really enjoy Sochi. It's not in my top 3 circuits that I'm gonna be naming later,
I would have ripped you if you did that, but
but
okay.
it's definitely a circuit that I enjoy watching. And why? For the exact reason Jonah said, because of the narrow, it's a narrow track, because it's not dangerous, but it's very extreme. I think that brings the thrill. I think that brings a a it puts you on the edge of your seat when you're watching the race. Who is going to be the one to screw up, or who is going to be the one at turn one to go out? What chaos is going to happen by the time they get to turn two, essentially? And by the time they have to go around that parabolic, not only that, but the circuit is full of straights. It's full of straights and very hard braking zones, and I love that.
But nothing
After
happens.
after the second DRS zone, it's so hard to do that break at the end, and then have to turn and continue the lap. I think it's a fantastic track. It's full of high speed straights. It's full of hard braking zones. It's full of very narrow turns. I love it. And I also love the fact that there's walls all around it. That's one of my favorite parts, is that it's not like Circuit Paul Ricard where there's nothing. It's
Yeah,
literally just, it feels like you're racing in a farm.
but it's also because they have so many circuits at Paul Ricard that I feel like drivers sometimes would just be confused as to which circuit they're
Yeah.
supposed to take because there are so many of them.
But yeah, I do really like Sochi. I think that there's so many unique aspects of the track. I think those hard braking zones do give a lot of room for overtakes, and I really like watching the race last year there.
I disagree with you. I can't believe I'm saying this as an F1 fan, but the only race that I fell asleep during the race was the Russian Grand Prix last year, because I watched the first lap. I think I watched the first 10 laps. At the end of turn one, Lance got flipped around. And
Are you sure that's why you didn't? That's why you didn't continue on?
No. Okay, Lance got flipped around, and Carlos Sainz navigated through that stupid escape route. And after that, it was 50 something laps of Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton getting a bunch of penalties. So
yeah, especially for the practice start.
yeah, exactly. It wasn't even for penalties for things that he did during the race. It was because of practice starts. It wasn't a good race. It's not a good circuit. And that's why I very much disagree with you. So
But I respect it. I respect it. Now, Jonah,
exactly.
I have a race that I fell asleep at last year.
Is this
And I
going to
think
be
that
your
you
worst circuit?
is, and I think that you fell asleep during the same race. I remember texting you during the race, and that is the finale of the season. It is Yas
Ab-
Marina Circuit
Abu
in Abu
Dhabi.
Dhabi, and I am not a fan. I'm not a fan. First of all, like Mexico, I like the rest of Mexico, but like Mexico, I don't think that there should be two back-to-back DRS zones. I think that is the most useless and counterintuitive aspect of a track that could possibly exist.
Yeah.
Because what would be the I mean, no when you have a DRS zone, for those who don't know, in order to get your rear wing out, you have to be within 1 second of the car that's in front of you.
It's impossible to do that at Yas
And
Marina.
and and especially for the second DRS zone, it's impossible for you to lose DRS on somebody, because if you're coming from the first DRS zone, you're clearly approaching the car, if not have already passed them. And if anything, it just allows for another switchback, because if they do pass them, the other car has DRS and you're able to easily switch back, which makes it so predictable and so strange to watch. It makes nothing change. It makes nothing happen really.
See,
And that's why,
you're implying that there is actually passing that happens at Abu Dhabi.
yeah, funny enough, but that all I'm saying is unrealistically, there is not. But in the event that there is, those are the two scenarios that can possibly happen with back-to-back DRS zones.
I 100% agree with you. Yas Marina is a bad circuit. It's not my worst circuit, because I wanted to talk about another circuit that I really don't like. But one thing we also didn't talk about is, first off, there is track at the Yas Marina circuit to make the hairpin right before the first DRS zone interesting. And instead, they just made it a medium speed chicane into a hairpin, so that any hopes of overtaking just don't exist anymore. That's one thing that really annoys me about Yas Marina. Another thing is just the entire third sector. Sorry, I have driven it a lot in
Up
F1
and
games.
down and up and down. And
Exactly. There's no opportunity to actually hit the throttle. It's just you're moving for about 300 meters, and then you just need to brake again because you're getting into another turn. And I agree with you. I think that it's a bad circuit. They spent loads and loads of money. I think they spent over $1 billion on building that circuit and the Ferrari theme park next to it, and they still managed to make a bad circuit.
yeah,
So
and it's one of the most recent circuits that were built especially for F1. So it's kind of disappointing that we have it on this list.
yeah, one thing that I actually find funny about the Abu Dhabi circuit is that in 2010, Fernando Alonso could have won the world championship instead of Sebastian Vettel, but because it was so impossible to pass in Abu Dhabi, he was stuck behind Vitaly Petrov in a Renault, who was in fourth place, and he needed to move up, I think, into the podium to win the championship. And because of Vitaly Petrov, and because it is impossible to pass on that circuit, he ended up losing out in the championship, and Sebastian Vettel ended up winning because of that. So bad circuit.
We could agree, but I want to hear your pick. What's your least favorite circuit?
I don't think we've talked about this circuit, you and I, before, but my worst, I'm going to preface this by saying I also drive this circuit a lot in F1, just so that I could try my hardest to put in a relatively competitive lap time or not go off track limits, because I absolutely do not like this track. for the ability to not place your car where it's supposed to go. And that circuit is the Shanghai International Circuit in China. Look, the straight is cool. Turn one is fine. Everything past that is just a bunch of really long, medium speed corners where if you screw up the apex, you're screwing up your entire lap. There's nothing that makes this track flow. And the major DRS sector at the end of the third sector ends in a giant hairpin, which I don't even think you could get two cars across with getting outside of track limits. And one thing that I can mention about the last turn into the straight is that that entire section of corners is just so badly placed that when the drivers actually did a virtual Grand Prix in China, they all just said, screw it, I'm not going to deal with track limits. And they all went 4 or 5 cars wide out the final turn so that they could get onto the straight. So because of all these weird medium speed turns that are so long, there's no real place for you to pick up the pace and complete a good lap without feeling like it's a hassle. And for that reason, Shanghai is my worst circuit on the calendar. I mean, it's on the calendar this year, but I want to talk about it anyways because it was probably going to be on the calendar this year if COVID didn't exist.
So it's funny that you mentioned Shanghai because I actually was going to put it instead of Spa on my second least favorite circuit, but I knew I could talk about Spa more, and I felt that you would do Shanghai justice, how bad Shanghai is justice. Because I knew you didn't like it. I think we spoke about it before, but I knew it was going to be there. Long story short, I agree. I think that it's so hard to drive. I don't drive it on the F1 game. I drive it on F1 mobile. I know it's very unrealistic, but I understand the complications behind it. I've seen the races there. It is not a fun track to watch. Like Spa, it's very hard to follow. You know, I love high speed. I love straights. I don't like such long straights. I think it's overkill.
That straight is so long at the very end.
100%, and I think it's overkill. And I think for that reason alone, combined with that section of turns you were talking about before we get to at the beginning of that sector, I couldn't agree with you more. It's very hard to follow. It's really not fun to watch either.
Yeah, there have been a few people that have played F1 games with me, and they know that if we're playing in a co-op season and Shanghai comes around, I don't even bother qualifying because I know that I'm gonna screw it up. Just because I just don't enjoy the track. There's nothing redeeming about it. It looks like an E, and that means that there are
with
a lot of
curved
exactly.
A curved E.
Exactly. It looks like an E.
It's like they tried to do the ocean or something.
There's nothing redeeming about the track. I think the worst part of it is just the giant left-handed turn. I think it's turn 3 or 4 where you want to hit the gas because you'd finally be able to get out of the apex of that turn. But because the apex is so long, if you hit the gas at a wrong point, you're going to end up in the gravel. I am going to stop getting mad at Shanghai because I know that I could get mad for a very long time. But that means that we've moved on now to our best circuits. And before we talk about our best circuits, Jordan and I talked about this before. We both knew that our number one circuit was going to be a certain circuit that I'm going to talk about later. So we're going to go through our top 3 that exclude that circuit, and the circuit that we're going to talk about now, which is both of our favorite circuits, is obviously Canadian Pride, Circuit Villeneuve in Montreal. And Jordan, I want to hear your thoughts about why you like the track so much.
Yeah, well, just for the record to begin with, bef- before we do the show, Joan and I have this agreement that we don't tell each other our rankings for anything. The driver episode, we didn't tell our rankings beforehand so that we could have the debate live in person in front of you guys,
Authentic reactions.
which I think I think it makes it more interesting. So why I like Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, I think that it's the best combination of turns and straights that there is in F1. I think that we have the second turn, which are two very good turns. They complement each other well, followed by a nice straight. We have a chicane, a normal chicane, followed by another nice straight. Chicane, followed by another nice straight, and a hairpine. It doesn't get better than that. There are the turns that are very well placed, high speed straights that are well placed also after a hairpine. You get the Wall of Champions, which is iconic. Everybody knows what it is. And it's not only our favorite track. I follow plenty of Brits on YouTube. I follow plenty of F1 YouTubers that say it's their favorite track as well. They're not even from North America. So I love it. I can't say anything more about it. It's, maybe 20 minutes away from my house.
Yeah.
And that also plays a big factor, a big role in my decision.
I no, but we both knew before coming in that Circuit Gilles Villeneuve was going to be our favorite circuit. So we didn't say anything else about our rankings other than that. And because we both like the circuit so much, and because we're Canadian, and because we're Montrealers, that is also why we're so disappointed that we can't have the Canadian Grand Prix this year.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
one thing that I love doing, especially since we are very privileged as Montrealers to live so close to an F1 circuit and to have an F1 race in our city, is whenever it's nice outside, I actually take my skateboard and I do hot laps around the circuit.
Actually,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. For people who don't know, and for people who live in Montreal and who haven't done this before, I really suggest you do this. Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, during the year, they leave it open. They split the circuit into two, and half of the circuit is for bikes and walking and skateboards and whatever, and half of it is for cars. So if you ever want to do practice laps around an F1 circuit, whether it be in a bike or in a car, I mean, to be fair, the speed limit in a car is 30 kilometers an hour, but um,
we could do the track walk.
it's not a lot. But exactly, if you
You could
want
mimic the
to
Thursday track walk.
if you want to walk around the track or if you want to bike around the track, um, you could do it in Montreal. And I think that that's something that a lot of circuits don't have because they're technically closed circuits, whereas Circuit Gilles Villeneuve is technically a street circuit since it operates as a public road the entire year round. But let's talk about the track. I agree with you, Jordan. I think my favorite part is definitely turn one and two, and then 3 and 4, 5 and 6. Right before you get to the first DRS zone, is where drivers show that they could really maneuver around a track, especially when you come out of the first chicane and you have this giant turning straight. When you come up from the right, you immediately see your breaking point from when you need to get into the next chicane. And I think that really tests the drivers. And of course, you can't go wrong with the hairpin. I think that the hairpin is the most intense part, not only of the circuit, but of F1. And finishing it off with the giant straight, the casino straight for, we could go to the casino and see the straight from the windows.
Yeah.
And the Wall of Champions, which has become so infamous in being so difficult that it has taken so many world champions, out of the race because of its quick right left hander, is what makes this circuit so great.
And
Um,
if you misjudge the speed coming out of the DRS zone, that's what makes it so hard to maneuver, and that's what differentiates the Kevin Magnusons in qualifying from everybody else.
oof. Oof. Way to roast Kevin Magnussen. Probably deserved, but anyways. Um, so that is why
Well,
we
it's
love.
very hard. So if anything, I'm praising him because I know how hard it is, and I understand that it's very easy to make a mistake, even by an experienced Formula One driver.
Yeah, I agree with you. So now that we've finished fanboying about Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, we can now
Yeah.
go to our rankings of the 3 best circuits that we believe are on the calendar. So with that being said, Jordan, why don't you start us off with your number 3?
Yeah, so I'm going to start off with the podium places, the bronze medal. My third favorite circuit is the Red Bull Ring in Austria. And I am so happy that Formula One spoiled us with 2 races there last year. To me, I love, as you know, I mentioned this so many times, I love high speed. And the turns in Austria are all, except for that one turn where we always see either a very interesting collision happen with Alex Albon last year.
Poor
Aside from that
Alex.
turn, we always see high speed turns with a lot of overtakes on those turns. In the Styrian Grand Prix in 2020 alone, in the last lap, I think there was 3 overtakes that led to changes in the final standings of the race, which make it so interesting. Anything can happen, any lap, and I love that circuit because of it's it's so simplistic, which makes it so awesome.
Uh, I love how you said the word simplistic because I don't know if you followed Tomo F1, but Tomo called it a fat off go-kart track. And I very much agree with him on that. To be honest with you, I wasn't a huge fan of the Austria circuit before we got to have 2 races there last year. And I think that was when it really showed how great of a track it really is. Um, like you said, super high speed, and it's led to some great moments over the course of its time in the circuit. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't have a lot to say because you said it so well.
Yeah, look, I love Austria. I love the Red Bull Ring, but I want to know what you love.
Okay, so for me, number 3 on the list is the Marina Bay Circuit in Singapore. Uh, I I don't know how you feel about that. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. I'm getting a thumbs
Yeah,
up.
I love that circuit.
Because
Great circuit.
here's the thing, Jordan. We've done a few episodes of these podcasts so far, and sometimes your nodding could be a nod of disapproval or a nod of big approval, and it's difficult to read. So
I'm a fan of Marina Bay.
okay, that's good to know. So uh once again, another circuit that I drive so much in F1 games. Uh, just just because it's so difficult. Uh, I remember especially in 2019 where Lewis Hamilton got on pole in a car that definitely should not have gotten on pole at that circuit because it is so difficult to maneuver through all of the corners. One point that especially sticks out to me. First off, let's talk about the Singapore sling, the chicane that doesn't exist anymore, that almost killed drivers' floors and their front wings, and has led to so many drivers basically crashing at the end of the turn trying to get out because they keep on flying off the curbs. But another point is through I guess you could call it the underpass under the section of spectators where you could turn right, and then immediately once you get past that,
Yes.
you get immediately into your apex for the next turn and already hit your braking point. And I think that's a major testament to how difficult the circuit is and why I enjoy it so much. Is maybe the racing may not be too great, but the circuit as it stands is absolutely beautiful. It's super difficult to drive, but it's difficult in the way that it's enjoyable. Whereas difficult in the way to drive Shanghai sucks. So That is why I like Singapore so much.
So I have a lot of admiration for Singapore. And I say that because for those who don't know, driving a 2-hour Formula One race is grueling for the drivers. I think they lose maybe 6 pounds every race, and they have to
Yeah,
keep such a regimented diet throughout the year to be able to have such a healthy body, to be able to go through that, the sweat and the tiredness that a Formula One race entails. And so, for those who don't know, Singapore is the track that is the most grueling for the drivers. It is a night race. It is one of the longest races of the calendar, one of the longest laps. And I have lots of admiration for the drivers to be so strong to be able to drive that race
they have some
for our
great necks.
entertainment.
Great necks.
And yeah, and so because of its difficulty, because of its complexity, you know, contrary to the Red Bull Ring, that's why I like it. That's why I have admiration for it. It's crazy how much they go through just for that one race alone. And the fact that it's a race under the lights, it's in the middle of the city of Singapore, it's beautiful. For that reason alone, I love watching it too.
I'm so happy that you feel that same way because I thought that you were gonna rip into Singapore because there are a lot of people that don't like Singapore. I
No,
guess
there are a lot
I
of
guess
people that
that's
don't like
my I
Singapore.
guess this is kind of my hot take, but it's not really
I
a
don't think
hot
it's that
take.
hot, Jonah. You got to
It,
work on your hot takes.
it's not okay. You definitely have more hot takes than me, Mr. Max Verstappen at number 19. But look, this is going to be probably one of my bigger hot takes for those who aren't, you know, for those who know a little bit more about F1 and who know the general consensus about how people feel about the circuits. But I'm very confident in this and I really like Singapore. But Jordan, what is your number 2 favorite track?
So my number 2 track can also be my number 1 track, and that's how much I love it. But I want to save number 1 track because that track is my favorite race to watch of the year. My number 2 track is a city circuit. It is on the French Riviera. It is Le Circuit de Monaco.
Okay.
I
Monaco.
love.
I'm happy that you talked about Monaco because I felt like putting it here, but I couldn't because I don't know. I'm not as passionate about it.
Monaco is such a great track. Not only is it a great track, it's a historic track. The track itself is iconic for its change in elevation. It's past, it's the iconic Herpine in front of the Fairmont Hotel, the straight under the tunnel, going to a hard braking zone at that chicane, the swimming pool chicane, Rascast. There's plenty of overtakes at Rascast that are super fun to watch. Monaco is fantastic. There's nothing to say about Monaco. It's one of the races I look forward to most in the year. And one of my dreams, because I've been to Monaco, I did the track walk, I've walked along the track. One of my dreams is to be in Monaco for the Grand Prix, because the atmosphere that weekend in the city state of Monaco is not like anything else in Formula One. It is such a unique weekend in such a unique place that the experience is like nothing else, and it's a dream of mine to be there during that weekend.
You know what? I 100% agree with you. And one thing that we don't realize about a lot of the street circuits is that we are literally going in the middle of people's lives.
Yeah,
we're going in people's right next to people's residences, people's shops, people's livelihoods. And I think that there is no circuit that shows that more than in Monaco because basically the entire city state becomes an F1 track for the weekends that it hosts races. And I 100% agree with you. It's a crazy track. I will tell you the best qualifying to watch in the entire season is Monaco, because imagine sure, you could race around Monaco, but imagine having basically an open lap and having to push like crazy around the streets of Monaco. Like, think of the giant hairpin where, first off, I don't even think it's possible for two cars to go one next to the other without having freak out moments because you're so close to one another. But imagine two F1 cars having to go through that hairpin. But back to qualifying, imagine having to push on that crazy street circuit with such little room for error, and
because it's so
especially
narrow too
exactly
in most
because it's
places.
such a narrow circuit. I agree with you. Monaco's a
It
fantastic track.
I look forward to watching that race every year, and I'm so happy that it's in the month of May because I mean it's coming up soon, and
I think it's in 2 weeks from now, eh?
and 3 weeks from now.
3 weeks from now.
And yeah, I have nothing left to say. It's the most iconic circuit for me in Formula One.
I agree with you. I think it's definitely the most iconic.
If
Um,
if if you were to ask, the average person to name a Formula One track, I think that 9 out of 10 times they would name Monaco.
yeah, it would probably either be Monaco or Silverstone, or if you're in Canada, Montreal. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, that is a very, very good pick. Uh,
Jonah, hit
yes.
me.
All right. I love this track so much. Uh, however, it could be interchangeable with number 3, Singapore. This was really tough for me, but I knew definitely what my number 1 is. But number 2, I have the Interlagos circuit in Brazil. Uh, just because it is so fast and it is a very nice mix of relatively low speed turns and huge straights. Um, I think one of the craziest turns in all of F1 has to be the last. I think it's basically a quarter of the circuit, but it's basically the last turn as you head into the main straight. There have been so many historic races that have come from Brazil, mostly because it was the finale of the season. And I think you and I could both say that it should still be the finale of the season. Um, but most notably, Massa winning the race and then losing the championship by 1 point because of Timo Glock slowing down at the last lap. Uh, whether it be, I think this was when Rubens Barrichello ended up winning at home. Uh, it's and even more recently, Pierre Gasly getting second place in a Toro Rosso. Well, I mean, now we could say, oh, that's not too much because he ended up winning. But Pierre Gasly pushing on the last lap and beating Lewis Hamilton in a drag race around the last turn of that circuit it's everything in that circuit that makes it so great. And that's why I think that it is the number 2 best circuit on the grid.
So I think Interlagos is great. It's definitely in my top 5. Wouldn't be my number 2 because I think there are more races to look forward to throughout the year. However, in terms of racing, in terms of pure racing, I completely get it. It is so fast. The turns are incredible. And we've seen some fantastic overtakes, especially that drag race with Gasly. Like I was going to mention that. That was an amazing race. It was also fantastic with the storyline of the season. Albon takes Gasly's place in Red Bull. Albon's fighting for a podium place.
Gets
He's
knocked.
he gets knocked by Hamilton, and then Gasly comes, swoops in, passes Hamilton, and gets second place. It should 100% be, undoubtedly, be the last race of the season. It's not fair. And I'm going to
I
leave it at that.
I agree with you. You know, it should be the finale. It's so much fun to watch. Uh if I could go on more of a personal anecdote, I remember watching the most specific Brazilian Grand Prix that I remember watching was Vettel's climb through the field in 2000 and I think it was 12 that ended up letting him win the championship at the end of that race. Uh, and it was so special for me to watch that race because I wasn't at home. I was in New York with in a house that my family rented so that all of my aunts and uncles and cousins could all be in one spot with my grandparents and us. So having basically my entire family sit down at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was to watch a Grand Prix and to watch Vettel's climb through the field was really a special moment for me. And that's also why this circuit is so etched in my memory for that.
Yeah, there are plenty of iconic moments that happened at this circuit. Think back to Lewis Hamilton and Nico Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
You know, there are plenty of moments that I can remember at this circuit because it is so fast. It allows for great one-on-one racing, and it just should be the last race of the season. I can't believe it's not. And now that I think about it, it's really a shame.
Yeah, I agree with you. But rather than talking about the low points of the circuit, we're going to go back to our number one choice. Jordan, besides Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, which we all know is the best circuit ever, what is your number one circuit on the calendar?
So like I said before, this circuit could be changed with number 2 because these are the races that I'm most excited about during the F1 calendar year, the ones I look forward to the most. It is we saw Pierre Gasly win here last year. We saw Charles Leclerc win here 2 years ago. It is the Monza circuit in Italy, the Italian Grand Prix. It is my favorite circuit on the F1 calendar. With Monaco, the 2 races that I look forward to most in the year, it is the best circuit because of its high speeds, because of its 2 narrow chicanes, it's unique Ascari chicane. There's not another one like it in the Formula One calendar. Parabolica, we saw some great moments happen there. We saw some unfortunate moments happen there as well.
Yeah.
I love Monza. I love everything about it. I think it is the temple of speed for a reason. It is the best race on the calendar, in my opinion. And I'm speechless. I don't know what to say more.
I agree with you. Monza's a great circuit. I'm very happy that you also mentioned Temple of Speed because if you didn't, I would have picked it up for you because it really is the Temple of Speed. And just to prove that, I watched a video recently of Valtteri Bottas back when he was at Williams trying to pass lapping a car, and with DRS on.
Back when Williams was lapping cars.
Yes, not being lapped.
Yeah.
But when Valtteri Bottas was lapping a car, he ended up hitting a top speed of 358 kilometers an hour. I don't even think I could imagine going that fast and feeling it, because I'm pretty sure the fastest you could go at that past that is in a plane, because that is how fast the Monza really is. And because of the hard braking points that come immediately after the huge straights, it makes the circuit so much fun to watch. And I think in terms of viewership, it's definitely a great track for the viewers. And we saw it happen, especially let's bring some Canadian flair here too. Lance has done really well at this circuit.
Yes.
In 2017, he was P2 in qualifying. Last year, he finished in 3rd. This is a great circuit.
So what I love most about this circuit is that in F1, we all know the qualifying is very important. The higher you are up on the grid, the less people you have to overtake come Sunday. When it comes to Monza, it is the definition of anything can happen. It is really the one of the only circuits where if you're starting P1, doesn't necessarily give you that much of an advantage because there's so many overtaking zones and so much can happen at that track because it is the temple of speed. Every year the race is different, it's unique, and it's very unpredictable. And that's what I love about it.
I agree with you. That is,
We're always treated to an amazing race. We're always treated to overtakes that we don't see during the year, in the rest of the calendar. We are always treated to a winner that we don't expect.
yeah, I think that it definitely has its place etched in history and definitely in your heart and my heart as well, even though it's not on my list.
And just to highlight something very important, in a non-COVID year where there would be fans, the Italian fans love Formula One like nobody else.
It's crazy.
It's an amazing culture that they have going on over there, with Ferrari being the most historic Formula One team. It is engraved in their identity, and it's amazing to watch.
Yeah,
and just to add to that, like that's why I also love Monaco so much, because it's an iconic track. It's in the streets of Monaco, and that's what builds the culture in Monaco. People are born knowing that on their streets in Monaco, there is a race happening every single year, and it's so much fun to watch. And that's what the kids grow up watching. And that's what builds the culture. That's what builds the Formula One vibe. And
all right. Well, thank you very much for falling in love with Monza, because you are definitely more passionate about that circuit than I am. With that being said, my number one track, I feel like, Jordan, you would kind of see this coming as my number one track. First off, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve we both know that it's both of our favorite tracks. But number one for me has to be the Baku City Circuit in Azerbaijan. I think that it is a great combination of super high speed straights, especially with the last straight heading into the pit lane, as well as a mix of extremely narrow turns, which lead to most notably the castle chicane. And because the castle chicane is so difficult to maneuver, let's not forget Charles's "I am stupid" comment, where he completely missed the apex and smashed into the wall, as well as basically the giant circle that brings you around.
hello?
Hello. Oh, whoa. We lost Wi-Fi. I think we lost Wi-Fi.
All good.
But I was talking about Baku, and how basically the end of the circle, with especially the castle chicane, and for the rest of the low speed corners that bring you through the both huge straights. It's a great combination of turns and of everything that makes the circuit so good. So that's why I have Baku as number one on my circuit. I hope that we didn't lose Wi-Fi while I was falling in love with the circuit, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see after we finish recording and how it looks. But I think I got most of it there.
Baku is incredible, and it could only have the castle chicane and I would be happy, because the castle chicane is fantastic. It's so tight, and there have been so many accidents, and you never know what can happen going into that chicane. We've had so many iconic moments, historical moments, from Ricardo Verstappen hitting each other, showing off that rivalry going on at Red Bull, showing off what, maybe giving us a little insight of what's going on at the Red Bull garage. Yeah, I like Baku also. The racing is fantastic. It's a race that I look forward to. Not in my top 3, but it is a race that I look forward to. The long straights is great to watch. It was unfortunate to watch back in 2017 when Bottas overtook Lance in the final lap, but it is a great straight to have on the track.
I was just about to talk about Lance and how he's done well at this circuit too, but you already talked about it. Well, look, you see it as unfortunate that Bottas ended up passing Lance in the last lap, but I love that. First off, the straight starts off with a few very, very high speed turns flat out. And then that is when Valtteri Bottas in a drag race managed to pass Lance. You see this as a missed opportunity for Lance, but I see it as Lance became the youngest rookie ever to be on a podium. And I think that maybe I'm a little bit biased because of that, but also just driving the circuit is absolutely crazy. Through the huge
It's
straights,
incredibly hard.
through the
I can't
huge
even imagine
through the huge straights, through the tough turns. It's a mix of everything that makes F1 so great, and I think that F1 builds their cars for circuits like Baku.
Yeah, I don't know how there are not more circuits with long straights like Baku. You know, we spoke about Shanghai before, how the straight is too long. Baku just does it right.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and that's why I'm very stuck on Baku.
The straight also is very wide too. We really don't talk about that so much. That straight, you know, there's the Castle chicane that's very, very narrow, but that straight is incredibly wide, which allows for such great overtaking opportunities. And
Yeah.
nobody really talks about that.
Yet here we are, we're talking about it. So at least
Yeah.
there are some people that are talking about it.
Well, I'm really glad that this episode we had more. We were more in agreement than in the driver episode. So I'm very happy about that.
I'm gonna look back at that driver's episode and see exactly where we disagreed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is what we have for today. Any final thoughts, Jordan?
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite episodes to record. I really enjoyed it. And I really am looking forward to Monaco in a couple of weeks.
I'm looking forward to that too. But first, I think we're recording this before Spain. This will probably come out after Spain, and it'll probably be right before Monaco. So if that's the case, enjoy the Grand Prix. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, follow our Instagram at JJF1 Podcast, and we will see you for our next episode. See ya.
Thank you.